Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about product rule and quotient rule. So, product rule and quotient rule are two rules that have some different notation. But before we get into that notation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to keep getting this great content. So, here's where, depending on how you learned it the first time, is kind of what you go with. I learned product rule and quotient rule with U's and V's. I know other people learned with f of x and g of x, or f and g's. It is just a personal preference. So product rule, we have u prime times v plus v prime times u. So we just need to know the derivative of one function multiplied the original of the other added to our opposites. So if I were to do this as f of x and g of x, we have f prime of x times g of x plus g prime of x times f of x. Some people even flip it around, so f is always first, so f prime of x, g of x, f of x, g prime of x. It does not matter. On the other hand, quotient rule matters a little bit more because we have division, so I have u divided by v. You're going to notice that we write product rule and quotient rule very similarly, and that's just so that way we don't have to worry about setup. So quotient rule, we have u prime times v minus v prime times u, all divided by v squared. So the derivative of the top times the bottom minus the derivative of the bottom times the top, all divided by the denominator squared. With f of x and g of x, f prime of x times g of x minus g prime of x times f of x, all divided by g of x squared. Once again, we can write this in a lot of different ways. Multiplication is one of those things that it doesn't really matter, just like addition, what order we do stuff in. It's quotient rule that makes it a little bit more of a need to kind of keep track of things. So when we look at stuff like number 1, we could sit there and multiply it all out for product rule. We can sit there and multiply it out for power rule, but sometimes we just don't want to, or sometimes we can't. So when I'm doing this in the beginning, all I kind of do is make a table. So I figure out what u is, I figure out what u prime would be, I figure out what v would be, and what v prime would be. So we just need to pick some values. So u in this case for me is going to be 4x squared minus 8x plus 3, and v is going to be negative 8x plus 3. The derivative of negative 8x plus 3 is negative 8. The derivative of 4x squared minus 8x plus 3 is 8x minus 8. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to put all of that together. So f prime of x equals u prime. So I have 8x minus 8 times v, negative 8x plus 3, plus negative 8 times 4x squared minus 8x plus 3. Sometimes we have to simplify it, and sometimes we don't. So it just really depends on the problem and what we're doing. If we have to simplify this, we're going to multiply out what we need to and then add like terms. So we have negative 64 x squared minus plus 24x plus 64x minus 24. We have a negative 8 times everything, so negative 32x squared plus 64x minus 24. So now we're just going to look for things that are common. I have a lot of negative x squareds, so if I combine these, I have negative 96x x squared. I have 64 plus another 64, so it's 128 plus another 24, so that's 152 x, and minus 24 and minus 24, so minus 48. So if we were to simplify it, we would get something like this. Realistically speaking, this is probably not going to be a multiple choice question because they're probably just not going to ask you a question like this. But they could, and that's the thing, is that they always could. Okay. So in this one, we have the cubed root of 64x squared, sine of x. So I have u going to be the cubed root of 64x squared times sine of x. So what we are going to do is make u the first part, v is sine of x. So v prime in our case is going to be cosine of x, which makes our simplifying a lot easier. This one, for u, we kind of have to simplify. So keeping in mind this is just everything to the 1/3 power. 64, the cubed root of 64, or 64 to the 1/3 power, is just 4, because 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. And then x would be raised to the 2/3 power. So now I can find u prime. So we have 8/3 x to the negative 1/3. I'm not even going to change it. It just is going to stay like that, which means we're not really going to simplify this one. So I have y prime equals u prime 8/3 to the negative 1/3 times v, so times sine of x plus cosine of x times the cubed root of 64x squared. And I don't necessarily need these parentheses because the cubed root kind of takes it all together. Okay. Sometimes product rule is embedded in other things. So this first part is just power rule, but this over here, we have an x times cosine of x, which means we have to use product rule. So g prime of x is equal to, first part, power rule, 12x squared. Done. Now I need to subtract. Everything after this is going to be product rule. So I can kind of separate this into two pieces. U can be 4x, v can be cosine of x. So u prime, the derivative 4x, times the original v, plus the derivative of cosine, so negative sine, times the original of our x, 4x. So I can go ahead and kind of distribute at least, make sure my signs are correct. So I have 12x squared minus 4 cosine of x minus 4x sine of x. Okay. We're looking at this. This says division, which means quotient rule. So u is going to be the top one always. So 2 minus 3x squared. V is always going to be the bottom one. So 4 minus 5x squared. V prime, negative 10x. U prime, negative 6x. So h prime of x equals u prime times v minus v prime times u, all divided by our original denominator squared. So u prime times v minus v prime times u, all divided by 4 minus 5x squared. So a lot of times we don't simplify the denominator, but if we have to, we simplify the numerator. So we're going to go ahead and distribute out what we can and then combine like terms. So negative 24x plus 30x cubed plus 20x minus 30x cubed, all divided by 4 minus 5x squared. So we have a negative 24x, we have a positive 20x, so we get a negative 4x. We have a positive 30 cubed, we have a negative 30 cubed, so those go away. And the denominator stays the same. So more likely than not, this would be our answer for a multiple choice question. So we just need to make sure we know how to simplify it, and we don't necessarily have to. Our last one here, 3e to the x cosine of x. U is our top function, so 3e to the x. The derivative is 3e to the x. V is cosine of x. V prime, negative sine of x. So each v prime of x is going to be u prime times v minus v prime times u, all divided by our denominator squared. We can't really do a lot with that unless we factor something out, but even if we do factor something out, it would literally just be the thing they have in common. So 3e to the x times cosine plus sine divided by cosine squared. And there's not really more that we can do with that.